Hello everyone, this is TaterChimp here, and this is a Raging Shard on Rolling in the Deeps. For those of you who haven't seen my work before, I have a few blogs that I put together basically talking about statistics in video games, how they apply, how they interact with different mechanics and things like that. So today I wanted to focus on DPS, which is damage per second. Now it's relevant in a lot of different types of games, like RPGs, action RPGs, RTS games, but really the same principles apply to a lot of different games. So today I'm going to be using Earth Defense Force as an example. So a very active shooter game that still has a lot of mechanics related to this behind it. So what do we need in order to calculate DPS? Well, there's two parts to it. We have the damage, which is going to be our numerator, and we have time, which is going to be our denominator. So the total damage in this game is going to be the clip size and the damage per bullet. So that's going to give how much damage it would do if we fired every single bullet and everyone hit. The total time is going to be our clip size divided by the rate of fire, which is to say the amount of time it takes to get to 0 bullets. Then, just to be thorough, I'm going to include the reload time in there as well. That whole bundle you'll hear me refer to as cycle times here. So, with that out of the way, let's get into a few equivalent examples. So here are the examples and metrics that we're going to work with. So the damage is damage per bullet, the ammo is the total clip size, ROF, rate of fire, how many times per second it fires, and reload, the total times to reload the gun. So our first example here looks like a carbine, something that fires decently fast, does moderate damage. The second one is probably more along the lines of an assault rifle. It has more ammo than the carbine, but deals less damage to compensate for it. At 180 damage, we probably have a shotgun or something in the third slot. The fourth slot, for some reason they always seem to throw these in, it's like the alien energy weapon, something like that. No actual ammo capacity, it can just keep firing all day. And finally, 400 damage. That's your sniper rifle, and that's your rocket launchers. Now what we have here is we have a lot of data, but what we don't have is we don't have information. So what we need to do is calculate our total damage, our damage times our ammo, and the cycle time. So the total time to empty out the clip plus the reload time. So let's put those numbers up and see what happens. So would you look at that? They all wind up being exactly the same. It's like I put this example together to showcase exactly that. So when it comes right down to it, there's no difference in which gun you pick. Now, of course, context is everything when it comes to this, so some of these rely on you hitting every single shot. If you're at a close range against a long range, of course it's going to make a difference, but in theory, everything comes down to preference, right? Well, there are actually multiple kinds of DPS. What we just calculated is something that I call sustained damage. The other type, which often applies in Dota, which is why we have this change of scenery, is called burst damage. Burst damage removes the reloading portion of our math and focuses on how much damage you can do in a very small window. After all, you won't always be fighting a monster for half an hour. Sometimes you just need that thing dead now. That is why Dota players are largely concerned with burst damage. It has a bunch of skills like Lena's ultimate or the Dagon item that do a ton of burst damage but then go on cooldown for about 2 minutes, a very long time in that game. So let's go ahead and look at our examples again with a consideration for burst damage this time. So we have a few new metrics up on screen. Let's go over what they are. So that DMG damage, that's just our damage times our ammo. So the total damage that exists in one clip. That cycle is the cycle time, what I had alluded to before. And as you can see, all of the damage and cycle times are exactly the same, which is why they have the same damage per second. Makes sense. Now that BC is actually our burst cycle time, so that removes the reload timing from the cycle times. Finally, we have our BD, burst damage, the metric we're looking for. So let's look at the results. So starting with the carbine, we have 100 burst damage, slightly higher than your sustained damage. This makes sense because you have to compensate for the reload animation. Next, we have our machine gun. It has a slightly longer reload animation, meaning that there's less time spent shooting over the course of a single cycle. This means, of course, it's going to have a higher burst damage. On the other side of that, our shotgun has a lower reload time. This means that its burst damage is going to decrease in comparison to the other guns. Now, we can see in our fourth example, the energy weapon, as the reload time goes to 0, the burst damage and the sustained damage stay exactly the same. This is why the shotgun gets less powerful as we look at the burst damage compared to its sustained damage. The most interesting example is the sniper rifle. It went from having 80 sustained damage to 132 burst damage. Basically, as long as you're firing and not loading more bullets into it, it's your best option. So my examples were built to be identical and provide some interesting talking points today. However, in the real world, or the virtual world, they aren't always so neat and clear cut. You need to have these calculations in order to figure out what the best weapon is. Still, though, context is the most important. Is your enemy hard to hit? Do you need to have an AoE blast over precision? So, what's the point of all this? Well, first you can compare similar guns. Maybe there's one shotgun that's clearly better than the others. Or you could figure out which tool is the most appropriate for fighting a certain enemy. Maybe they're super frail, so one-shotting them is more important than being able to take it to a longer game. Basically, I wanted to provide you with the tools you would need in order to be able to answer those questions on your own. So that's it for today. I'll see you guys around on the next one.